ready to go.
The loudspeaker spoke up and said,
Wait, Jimmy.
the loudspeaker spoke up and said,
Wait, Jimmy.
the loudspeaker spoke up and said, give up, give up, give up, give up, give up.
Wait, Jimmy. Wait, Jimmy. Wait, Jimmy.
I'm Clyde Lewis, and this is Ground Zero. The numbers to call tonight, 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. You can check us out by going to TalkStreamLive.com. We recommend TalkStreamLive.com for those who wish to hear the show in its entirety. If you're not getting the entire show, you can check out all the links that are at TalkStreamLive.com, links to radio stations that are streaming the entire program, at least the national part, and there are, of course, other times available that you can listen. Also, there's a phone number you can call, 712-770-9701. That's 712-770-9701. You can dial that number to listen to the show on your phone, or 857-252-1086. That's 857-252-1086. Also, SoundCloud.com / Ground Zero Media is a place to go to binge listen. And when all else fails, just go to listentogroundzero.com, and there you'll find all the links available to listen to this program. Want to remind you that this is the deadline. Tonight's the deadline for the Ground Zero CD. And a lot of people are jumping on board to get the CD. Ron is even going to come in tomorrow to make sure that all the CDs are mailed out. So if you want to get it, this is your last minute try to get it. You just go to patreon.com / Clyde Lewis, patreon.com / Clyde Lewis. Click on become a patron. And then for the $12.99, we send you this. Be sure to give us your correct address to make sure that this ship's okay. And we are going to send it out as soon as possible so you have it ready for the holiday. It's a great CD to have. It's a collector CD from myself, Ground Zero, Clyde Lewis, and the staff. And we certainly will hope that you appreciate it and you love it. We were laughing at it again today. We were listening to it and having a big laugh. A lot of people, the staff, hadn't heard it, and they're just enjoying it. They think it's an awesome CD, and I think you will too. So go to patreon.com / Clyde Lewis. Click on the patron area, and for the $12.99, we'll get that out to you as soon as possible. So make sure you get that right address out there so Ron can get that mailed to you. Tonight on the program, a lot of people asking me about whether or not I stayed up late to see a certain movie. No, I didn't stay up late to see a certain movie. I came in early today to see a certain movie. I actually came into town, and early for me was like 10 o'clock. However, the movie was bumped to 11 because somebody had bought out the entire theater. And so they were sold out. And so I had to wait. I had to wait pretty much, an hour, and I had to see it in 3D because for some reason they weren't selling out 3D seats. They were only, selling the standard seats. And so we were there seeing it 3D. I saw with my friend Dave. Lucian was supposed to be with us, but he said that since they bumped it an hour, he had to go pick up his son. Didn't have time to spend 2.5 hours in the theater. So, you know, of course, being a dad means more than being Star Wars, and that's good too. I mean, and besides, you know, the whole idea, which I think was interesting, is that, you know, the whole idea of Star Wars, at least this version of it, was kind of, I would say it was a reverent look at our generation and then the new generation that is coming. And the funny thing about this film is that I don't think describing it would do it any justice because it was such a remarkable experience. It's one of the, I cannot stress enough how much of a unique experience this film was. In fact, you know, putting it right up there with The Empire Strikes Back, Rogue One. And so I wanted to bring on a guest on the program. He's been on the show before. Daniel Lewis Crumpton is a writer, philosopher, podcaster, and activist. His novel, Then Came the Flood, was published in 2012. It's an epic exploration into the events recorded most notably in the books of Enoch and Genesis, as well as several texts from the New Testament. He is a Star Wars fan, obviously. And he's working on a new novel that can be found at downloadedcontent.com. He is also, it's just awesome that he's with us tonight. And I just wanted to bring him on to kind of talk about. Did you see the movie, Daniel? Did you?
Oh, Clyde. We have been talking about Star Wars for almost 3 months. And you think and you plot and you plan and you try to say, how am I going to present this without having seen the movie? And then the sheer energy that surrounds Star Wars for any generation makes everything fly through the window.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm a huge Star Wars, Star Trek fan, but I stayed up all night. And when I got into the theater as a movie fan, and then somebody who studies the esoteric and knows the deeper levels of what we're actually seeing on the screen, I was saying, how are me and Clyde going to discuss this movie? Because it's going to be like a minefield without giving away spoilers, and I don't think that. Yeah,
we can't do it. This is the one where you cannot at all, under any circumstance. I mean, I remember the first one that came out. I remember when Force Awakens come out, people were like going, "Oh yeah, this is what happens." I don't think they really held it as sacred, but this is pretty sacred canon, I think, when you look at just what it explains and what it shows and the deeper esoteric meanings that are with it and the reverence that I think is given to the first generation that launched Star Wars into its popularity, and then eventually the handing of the baton to the new generation, which I think is amazing. And that's not giving anything away, because we all know that the new generation has already made its debut. You know, Kylo Ren, Rey, Finn, all those characters, which are great characters. You know, they now are what kids are looking for and what they're watching. But it was good for us older guys to watch it too, because of the same old characters that are in it.
Yeah, and if you notice in Hollywood lately, there's been a very big trend about passing the baton of these. In my opinion, a lot of these science fiction shows like Star Trek and Star Wars, these are much more than just science fiction entertainment.
Oh yeah,
these are tomes of wisdom, ancient wisdom. And Star Wars, you know, in your monologue, you had mentioned the one person that if you don't think of this person with Star Wars, then you're not looking at it the right angle. That's Joseph Campbell.
Mm-hmm.
And the entire cycle of Star Wars, how it really is pointing to the individual's journey. And Star Wars it has sucked us all in. There is no one in our culture that hasn't heard or knows something about the Star Wars mythos. And there's got to be a reason for that. I know that there's a lot of conspiracies about, the Hollywood mind control and things like that. And I think to a degree, well, in fact, it is a fact to a degree that we are being conditioned. There are messages coming across the screen and in popular culture, and especially in things that Hollywood puts tons of money behind, like Star Wars. There's much more than just entertainment there. And so we have to ask the question, what is it exactly that we are being told or that we are being tapped into? I mean, if you go back to Star Trek, for example, you see that Gene Roddenberry and those writers of the original series, they pretty much predicted our generation, from flip phones to sliding doors to now transporter technology, things like that.
Right.
So to me, it's overwhelming. And this particular movie, this particular installment of Star Wars really took me by surprise. And without ruining it, and Clyde, I'll see what you think about it, from the very beginning of the film, what just popped in my head was this movie is a neuro-linguistic programming pattern interrupt for generations and an entire culture.
I would agree. I would agree that it certainly has that effect. And as I was saying earlier, and I didn't see this. I have monitors on. I'm looking at all the monitors, and one of the tabloid shows was just showing, people who should be considered for an Oscar. Don't you think that Mark Hamill should get an Oscar for his portrayal of Luke Skywalker?
Absolutely. Now, I will say this about the movie. I think that it's going to take people out there at least 2 times before what they really saw is going to sink in.
Yeah,
but as far as Mark Hamill goes, how you can, at first I was worried, how is Mark Hamill going to tap back into Luke Skywalker? After all these years, how is he going to tap back into that character and show growth and development? And he delivers.
He delivers in spades. And I sat there the whole time, and in the different instances where you see Luke, and very different from young, old, wherever in the film, it just blows you away. The countenance, the way he is, the way he feels, the way he's expressed himself about the Jedi Order. He feels that the Jedi Order, like anything else, it either needs to be fixed or it needs to stop. And it's funny because I thought about that too, that not only does Star Wars give us a lot of esoterics in it, but it also tells us that there are people among us, and now it kind of is evolving into everybody, has this power to bring to them a force, and that is a force of will and a force to push forward and to bring hope when all things look like they're falling apart.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the idea of the force, when I got caught in the generation of the middle trilogy. So the original Star Wars had, it had already had its explosion. And so now I'm able to witness this new series coming out and the continuation of the mythos.
Yeah.
And from, me speaking to, my older brothers and things like that, when the original Star Wars came out, they said, you don't understand, Daniel. It changed everything. It changed everything.
Well, this one is changing everything too. I think this new installment, I think they've overdid it. I don't know how they're going to top this one, because I certainly am. I was pretty, I guess you could say, up and down about the last one, because it seemed like a reboot of A New Hope. This one stands on its own as one of the best Star Wars films ever produced. Daniel Lewis Crumpton with us tonight on Ground Zero. We're talking about Star Wars. We're talking about some of the esoteric messages in Star Wars. We're not going to give too much away about the film, because to do so would be anathema. To do so would ruin the entire experience of this film. This film is one of the best Star Wars films produced. 888-673-3700. We'll be back. A ton of esoteric knowledge can be had by almost anyone. The chosen one can be you. Seems to be the message of the latest Star Wars film, The Last Jedi. Daniel Lewis Crumpton, my guest tonight. We both saw it. He saw it last night. I saw it today. We're talking about it. And once again, we have to say that this is one of those films that you can't give too many details about the movie, because if you do, it will ruin the experience. And so I decided what I wanted to do is I wanted to take a general overview of what I think the whole idea of training somebody, the whole idea of a secret school or a Jedi temple or a Jedi school or somewhere where you can learn to nurture the inner force. And I think the message was, and as they've always tapped into these Eastern philosophies, everybody can be a hero if they just nurture these superpowers they have. What do you think of that?
In some circles, you better be careful who you tell.
Right, that's true.
You might end up in a padded room, but you mentioned before the break the Force, and Star Wars is obviously very heavy in the Force, and we didn't. Everyone wanted to kind of look down on it when it got into the science of midichlorians from the last trilogy, and it almost seemed like the consciousness of the public wanted to reject knowing too much about the Force. People didn't want to know the nuts and the bolts of the Force. They liked it a little bit analogous.
Right.
It's something that you just feel.
Right.
And I'm not going to lie to you. When I went into the theater, and typically whenever I see a movie, especially during the premiere, the feel of the people around you in the audience, generally, you can feel it. There's an energy. Mm-hmm. If you've ever been in a movie that you've been excited to see, that you're a fan of, and you're laughing at all the jokes, but the rest of the audience is crickets, it affects the way that you view the film.
Well, there is humor in this one. I mean, there's a little bit of humor in it, but a very serious tone when it comes to learning the ways of the Force. Very serious tone in what the Force means to everybody and how it holds everybody together. and the idea of a crisis in faith. When you have a crisis in faith, you draw upon what you believe. You hold on to those beliefs, and they're not as wacky and weird as we think.
Right. And, and this is like I didn't get to see The Force Awakens in theater, so I was excited to see that. I caught it at 11 o'clock, and the audience that I was with was kind of dead. I was hoping that, when the Star Wars the theme popped up, people would scream and jump up, but the audience I was unfortunate enough to be in was kind of dead.
I didn't get dead. You know what I got? I got reverent. That's what I thought. I mean, I was in a crowd. It was a morning crowd. There was a little bit of cheering when Star Wars started. But as soon as the credits rolled and as soon as, we started seeing the battles and everything going on and meeting the new characters, there was laughter in some parts. I think they laughed at all the good parts that were laughter parts. But the thing that got me the most was the reverence. It just seemed to me that there was a lot of reverence for this film. It was just, everybody was kind of like, it was like, oh my gosh, we're learning something here. We're this, and for me, I mean, this is what I was thinking too. When the Force Awakens came out, everybody in our generation said, oh, this is the film we've been waiting for. The prequels sucked. They're for another generation, but this is the one we were waiting for. And then when it happened, some of us weren't exactly all that turned on by it. We were thinking, okay, it's kind of a ripoff of the first one. They're kind of setting the stage here. But then the second one came out. This is the Star Wars our generation was looking for. And I think that they did this because they want to make sure that this generation who started the Star Wars fandom are satisfied enough so that we can hand the torch on to the new generation and they'll feel like that they were respected. This is hats off to the old generation. We love you. We want you to keep coming to the films, but we got a new generation to deal with, a whole new group of actors, a whole new group of people. And but it wasn't done in such a way where I'm thinking, well, they're leaving us all out. It was done in such a way where I felt old when I was watching it. I felt like, oh my gosh, this has been 40 years of this, and we're learning now just how important everything is. And that's what I got from it.
You were more fortunate than me. That's why I have to see it a second time, because I got to see it with a more energetic audience. But I think that it was a good experience, because here's what I thought about it, Clyde. I said, obviously it's Star Wars. So when it comes to special effects and cinematics, we've seen everything before. You can only make a spaceship look so spectacular with the music. I thought the brilliance of this movie was its subtlety with the settings and the nature of what we were dealing with.
Yes.
But what I kind of picked up from the film is the tone or the formula of this second act takes a direction that is totally left field. It did catch me by surprise. Go ahead.
It was a religious experience for me. I mean, I need to say it because it felt like a religious experience. It really did.
It took us further into the mythos of the Force. It advanced us. It didn't rehash the same things. No. We saw things with the Force in this movie that we were like, wait, what?
Yeah, we didn't know that the Force could do this. And in fact, what's really interesting is that everything that I talked about in the first hour, everything I talked about with these kids that were trained in these schools are some of the things we're approached in the movie. And that's why I think it's very important that we try to mix the two and bring them together, because it is certainly something that when you see it, you'll go, oh, Clyde was talking about this the other night. And these people have been trained to do this. People in these secret schools and the initiates, the initiation. It's very real. I'm beginning to believe that there's something out there, and these kids that are calling in, or these grown-ups are calling in that were kids that had this type of thing. Amazing. We'll be back.
Back to Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis on FM News 101.
Even you have never faced such a test. This time, my ally is Force. And the powerful Clyde. Its energy surrounds us. Not this through matter. You must feel the Force around you. of power. Believing your people were safe and protected. Remember back to your early teachings. All who gain power are afraid to lose it. Move against the Jedi first. You will then have no difficulty in taking the Queen.
At last we will reveal ourselves to the Jedi. At last we will have revenge.
You have been well trained, my young apprentice. They will be no match for you.
The sacrifices are heavy. We fight knowing that a single spark of courage can ignite the fires of hope. Restore peace across the galaxy.
I'm Clyde Lewis. You are listening to Ground Zero. The number's to call tonight, 888-673-3700. It's 888-673-3700. Tonight, a little about Star Wars and a little about some other things, too. Saw Star Wars today. It's an amazing film. Can't give too many spoilers away because that would ruin the whole experience. Daniel Lewis Crumpton is with us tonight. He saw it too. We're just having a discussion about it. But the thing that's most important about the message of Star Wars is they really pour on the Eastern philosophy. They really pour on the Eastern philosophy, I think, in this one. But it's like what you said. Joseph Campbell had a big hand in this. I think that's one of the reasons why it does so well, because I think they borrow a lot from what Joseph Campbell had taught. And Lucas did the same thing when he talked about the hero's journey. And so this is the epitome, or it's the most well-explained hero's journey story. But what is most impressive is the idea that there are many people who wish to train these young people who have these powers, or they suspect they have these powers, and they say, well, the Force is strong in this one. I want to try and train them, or I want to try and guide them in a direction that's going to help them, especially when it comes to some of the characters that we see on the screen and how powerful they are. It's amazing to how powerful they are with the right training. And I was talking last night with there's a guy named Joe and another girl named Michelle who called the program, and they said that they were taken out of their classes and that they were shown cards and they were asked to do a little ESP trick, and they were reading tarot cards and doing looking at ink blots and having experiments done with them where they're learning how to embrace their pain and be fighters. And I'm thinking, if this is the case, and if there are a lot of people who've had this experience, which I'm asking people if you have to call the program tonight, then what was the purpose of this? And we have seen this over and over again, not just in Star Wars. We saw it in The Matrix, okay? We've seen the one chosen to be trained in the arts of, thought and martial arts and psi and all this stuff. We see that in The Matrix. There was a TV show called The Pretender, where a guy named Jared was taken from this place and was trained in a place called the Center. We have Fringe, where a girl named Olivia and a bunch of other kids were trained by a guy named Walter Bishop, and they were given a drug that was supposed to enhance their psi abilities. I mean, and of course, Eleven from Stranger Things. She's another example of this. What do you think Hollywood is trying to tell us?
Well, Clyde, when you go back to the original trilogy and that generation, now, come on, be honest with everybody, because I'm not going to lie, I know I have. After you watch Star Wars and you're alone and there's a pen on your desk or, a flickering flame, you've held your hand up. And everyone who has an inner child has tried to tap in to these abilities. And when we were speaking earlier about how this movie takes the concept of the Force to a new area that we haven't seen before. Well, back in 1979 and afterwards, before then, not so many people were talking about the actual reality of telekinesis, psychic abilities, remote viewing, things like that. Now you can't turn around without it being everywhere. Thankfully, a lot of people, especially in the internet culture, it's almost a given that people have these abilities. It's just a matter of tapping into it. And Star Wars kind of was the seed that made that movement on the collective consciousness happen. And so when, you and I were watching today and we see this concept of the Force and these abilities and who could be, say, Force sensitive or one with the Force, there are distinctions. What if the morphic field of the collective consciousness was shifted by Star Wars to such a profound degree to where you can't turn around in any store and not see some Star Wars product? What is this particular film going to cause the collective consciousness to shift to in just the evolution of what the Force can do? And when I say that, I don't mean you're not going to see huge sweeping special effects of the Force. As a matter of fact, from my point of view, Clyde, the actual scale of the conflict of this movie, if you stop and think about it, was much, much smaller than the other Star Wars films. And I think that was giving us an opportunity to really look at the characters,
right,
the character arches, their interaction, and to really show you that something is changing in the living Force.
Well, and when you go back and you remember what the Emperor said about the Force, he said the goal is ultimate power. Ultimate power, he said, and when he's taking out Mace Windu, he says ultimate power, and he's swelling up with his power. The difference now is it's not the idea of ultimate power. It's what you do when you wield the power. Who can wield the power, and who's listening to the power, and it just boggles the mind. As to, it takes it a step further saying, there are those who hold the power, but unless you know how to really use it, unless you're trained, unless you really study and you really keep up, you're probably going to put yourself in a world of hurt. And with a certain character, and I think I don't have to say the character, but, it also showed what out of control power can do. It's not ultimate. It's like, what happens when someone is out of control? And believe me, in excess, over the top, out of control power is what we see too. It's like we see the extremes. We see the power used for very, very good reasons, the power that is used that is out of control, and the power that exists when you have a crisis in faith.
Well, that was another key theme that I think runs prevalent through all the Star Wars movies. And for those people who operate in the metaphysical or in the occult, and who, quote, magic is a way of life for people like us. I identify as a Gnostic, which has many different flavors. But the metaphysical existence is more real to people of my proclivity than, say, reality. So this is something that we live in. Every now and then we step into, quote, reality. Mm-hmm. But, incense, candles, the remote viewing and things like that, astral projection, these are things that Gnostics and people who are spiritual, they live every day. And one theme that, and I don't want to ruin it either, but, Luke Skywalker's arc, it rang so true for people like us. And it's that when you do have abilities, when you do cultivate those abilities of the pineal gland, people come to you. They are drawn to you, and it is for instruction. And Clyde, it never fails. When you do open up yourself to, quote, mentor someone, I've seen it 99.99% of the time. When they do learn a little bit and they get a taste of power, it's very tempting to go to, quote, the dark side, and most never come back. And, I equate that to whenever you teach somebody who's not well balanced in the fourfold nature of man anything metaphysical, it's like giving an AK-47 to a toddler.
Right.
You get people who start practicing black magic that cause a lot of harm, and it does make you want to stop teaching and go and become the hermit of the tarot card, and only teach those who have gone through a rigorous show that they are balanced and will use it for good. Mm-hmm. And you do get bitter. You do become a hermit, and you do start to lose hope, like Luke does in this movie, not giving away too much, but you become a little bit bitter. Mm-hmm. And you go, is there, how is it that people can't not be tempted to harm others with this? And that was such a huge theme in this film. The temptation to take the power that is there and go to an extreme of oppressing others or believing that you have the right to oppress others.
Yes, the entitlement factor was in there too. I have the entitlement. I have the power. I've done the training, and now my entitlement is I'm striking down the one who leads me. I want to take his place. And then the scorched earth policy idea that, hell, nothing deserves to be around because everybody has betrayed me. Everybody has left me. I just shake my head and say, that was some of the attitudes that existed in World War II, especially on the Nazi side, where, Hitler had this idea that he told his men, he said, look, he says, no German, I would think, would want to live if the Third Reich falls. And so you have your orders to try and bring the earth down and destroy it. And then I think that was the whole reason for the Cold War. I think the whole reason for the Cold War was that when the Nazis came here with the CIA and they created the what they called the missile gap, where they started talking about how Russia wanted to bomb us when they were our allies in World War II. And then when the same guys in the CIA were saying, well, Russia's going to bomb us, and then some of the Nazis that went over to Russia said, well, the Americans are going to bomb Russia, when that wasn't the case at all. I mean, they created this paranoia when Russia helped us during the war. All of a sudden, they became the evil empire. They're the ones that we were fighting against. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that there was a scorched earth policy involved. There were a number of Nazis within the CIA that would wanted to see the whole world burn because they weren't getting their way to have the Third Reich in power.
Right. It's like a deranged ex-husband syndrome. If I can't have it, and have her, nobody can.
Right. That's exactly the way it was. That's the way I see it too. And so, here we are in a time where, just last night I was talking about MK Ultra, and I was talking about the CIA, and I was talking about all of this mind control stuff that was brought over by the Nazis. And a lot of it had to do with training, brainwashing, and getting people to do their bidding. And from there, we've had stories, and last night we had some stories, and they weren't necessarily MK Ultra, but it was the idea that there were times in a lot of these, they're older people now, but when they were children, they were in school, and they were taken out of school to do training. They were told that they were gifted, and they were told that they needed to do this. They needed to look at cards. They needed to, look at ink blots. They needed to listen to certain types of music. They needed to, nurture some sort of ESP. And I'm thinking to myself, if this program exists, if this secret program existed and kids were taken out of school to do these extracurricular things, perhaps this is why we're seeing these types of shows being very successful in Hollywood, whether it be Fringe or The Matrix or The Pretender. Or, I go down the list of all of them where there's got to be a one that is being trained for some special purpose, and they're doing so in some secret school or enclave. And they do this with our presidents as well. Like Barack Obama, they said, was groomed to be president, and that he is part of the bloodlines, the midi-chlorians we hear about. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. Daniel Lewis Crumpton on the program tonight. Back with more and your calls right here on Ground Zero. Don't go away. Daniel Lewis Crumpton with us tonight on Ground Zero. Now, Daniel, I want to show you, I'm going to demonstrate to you just how this whole setup of people being trained outside of their schools has gone down. I have full phones right now of people who have had this experience. I have never in my life, I am completely blown away by this because there are a lot of people out there. You know how you talk about people who've been either gang stalked or they've been, they're hearing voices or they feel they're being harassed. That's a subgroup that we talk about sometime. This is a subgroup where they've been trained. Okay. Just like in Star Wars. Okay. Let me give you an example here. Let's go to Precious in Texas. Hi, Precious. You're on Ground Zero with Daniel Lewis Crumpton. Go ahead.
Hi. My father, who was a shaman, and my godfather, who was an Apache medicine man, trained me from birth. And there was a point when I was in grade school that I got pulled out and some people wanted to talk to me, and they wanted to test me a little bit to see what I could see, how well I could do. And I did well, but my father, when I told him, went to the school and put an absolute stop to it. And my training was a little bit different because they were really very concerned about the animals and the earth and the plants and the people. But the concern about the people was healing the people, helping people find the solutions to their problems. Mm-hmm. And so later on in my life, starting in my 30s, about every 5 to 10 years, I would be contacted by somebody from the government to get me into a program where I would do remote viewing because I was so good at that. And also to get me into remote hearing because I always seemed to know what people were thinking before they said it. So at first I thought it would be interesting to see what it was about. But as soon as I started, the nature of where they were seeming to go with this really spooked me. It made me, and I had been trained to see what people were up to, you know, to kind of see if there was any kind of trickery or ulterior motives involved.
Were they training you to kill with your mind, Precious? Is that why you didn't want to go forward with it?
I can't say that, but I can say they were not up to anything good. And that was from the government.
So they wanted you to tap into this dark side of shamanism that you were taught. You were taught the light side, but they wanted you to tap into the bad side.
They wanted me to tap into anything that they could use. They just wanted to use me.
So they wanted to use you for psionic intel.
Yes.
Wow.
And so I ran from them. I was terrified. I thought these people I could see what they would do to me.
So Precious, would you say, because we're running out of time, Precious, we're running out of time. So you would tell me that the force is real, that you were trained as a child, and that somebody in the government wanted you to do something bad with that power.
The force is absolutely real, and the government wanted me to do something bad with that power. But I also know that everybody has the ability to find that force within them and to use it for good.
Well, Precious, thank you so much. I really appreciate you calling the program. See, Daniel? There you go. We're going to be back at your commentary on this, Daniel. 888-673-3700. Daniel Lewis Crumpton with us tonight on Ground Zero. Do you have the force, or have you been told you have it? Were you taken out of school to be trained? And what was that power used for? Do you use it now? And are you using it for the right-hand path or the left-hand path? 888-673-3700. We'll be back. Daniel Lewis Crumpton with me tonight on Ground Zero. And that collective consciousness is responding to what we see in certain television shows and movies, and a trope that's being used that I think is being there to somehow manufacture or at least create an interest in nurturing the power of the mind. And what I mean by that is the power of telekinesis, the power of transcendental meditation, the power of ESP, the power of remote viewing. Now, just a part, I saw Star Wars today. I saw the Last Jedi today, and boy, it's an amazing film. It really is. I mean, it's so amazing that I can't even give a spoiler. I just can't. And the reason why I can't is because it's hard to explain the movie. It's taking the universe in a direction that we've not seen before. It's original. It can stand on its own. It just taps into a lot of things that amaze us. And I wanted to point out that some of the things that it taps into are many of the same themes we've been seeing before, but done in a different way. And what I'm talking about is many times we've had these tropes being used in science fiction that are about the chosen one. And that the chosen one has these powers. And that, everybody has this ability and power to nurture some inner power, some inner force that they have. In fact, I was just thinking during the break, anyone who's watched Stranger Things, we talked about Stranger Things on the show, and I'm always going to reference back to it because Stranger Things is also groundbreaking. Stranger Things 2, of course, the second season, there was an episode that has polarized a lot of the fans, but it's still a good episode, and that is episode 7. If you're watching Stranger Things, or if you've seen Stranger Things, the 7th episode called The Lost Sister. A lot of people have argued about The Lost Sister, but ever since, the debut of Stranger Things that happened in October, this episode of The Lost Sister is basically, it moves the action away from Hawkins, Indiana, where it's supposed to take place, and it doesn't even feature the main cast. It only features 11, the character 11. Now, for those of you that don't know, 11 is this girl that has special powers. And these special powers have been nurtured in her since her birth, because she grew up in a laboratory where they were testing her to be a remote viewer to find out Soviet missile sites. She was in a place like Montauk, Camp Hero, where these tests were done in our reality. In real life, the tests were done, and many children claim that are grown up now, claim that they were experimented upon in this laboratory to nurture their powers, their psychic abilities, their abilities to leave their bodies. And so you look at Stranger Things 2, and you see Elle, or 11, and she travels to Chicago to meet her long-lost sister. Her name's Clyde. And both girls were raised in Hawkins at this laboratory, and then eventually they were separated. Clyde is now a leader of a gang that hunts down and kills the lab employees who kept her and 11 imprisoned. She has this special ability of creating an illusion that's not real, but people see it as real. 11 has all of these powers to move things with her mind, remote view. Now, if you find this dynamic familiar, the reason why it's familiar is because when the producers, the Duffer Brothers, when they produced the film, the series, the 7th series, they were thinking about the hero's journey, what Joseph Campbell talked about, and what is the most important, I guess you could call it, trope within the Star Wars saga, and that is the journey of Luke Skywalker, the journey of Anakin Skywalker, the journey of Princess Leia, the journey of Han Solo, the journey of all the heroes, and how they use their powers, how they use their inner self to conquer and beat the dark side of the Force. Now, I'm telling you, the new Star Wars film delivers, and it's so compelling that it's hard to reveal anything, and so I won't, but I will draw some comparisons, I will tonight, because I think it's important. And we've had a lot of callers tonight, and we're inviting you to call us at 888-673-3700. We've got a lot of callers tonight who've called in and said that they have been a part of an experimental program where children were used they were trained our last caller said that she was trained by shaman to tap into her powers that she had, powers in her mind that she had. And then when the government got wind of what she did or what she was doing, they took her out of school and started testing her. Her father wanted to put a stop to it, but they wanted her to do things that she said that she would not do. Bad things, evil things, tapping into the dark side of the Force. And she said there is a Force, and you can do good things with that, but then there are some that want to tap into it, and they want you to do bad things. It's kind of like Neo in The Matrix. When they found out that he was the one, when he had the powers, Agent Smith comes knocking at the door saying, "Mr. Anderson, I want you to do something for me." You know, it's just the idea that, you know, when you're found or when you have this power, someone will always be there to try and tap into it and use it for a nefarious purpose. And so, I mean, these themes, it just seems like these themes are so prevalent now in what we're seeing that I'm wondering if there's a message there. Someone's trying to tell us something. Daniel Lewis Crumpton here tonight on Ground Zero, commenting on Star Wars. So, you know, I was thinking about that. Think about Stranger Things. Think about 11. Think about all the characters in Star Wars and their powers. While none of them were trained in some lab somewhere in Hawkins, Indiana, they certainly had their what they call their you had the apprentice and then you had the one who trained them. The apprentice and one who trained them, and after it's all over, you get to decide what side you want to play on, right?
Well, you know, you bring up Stranger Things too, and Stranger Things 2 is absolutely brilliant, and you bring up Collie. And I find it ironic, you know, there is certainly since 2012, since December the 21st, 2012, there is certainly in movies and in the spiritual movement a moving towards masculine to the feminine. And the very fact that they named 11's sister Kali, when we're at the end of the age of the Kali Yuga, before the final avatar Kalki is supposed to appear, it's staring you in the face. This is not something that they're just, oh, look, we'll sprinkle that in there. Absolutely not. These things, you know, life imitates art, art imitates life. You know, I found that one episode, and like you said, Clyde, it does stick out because it just completely takes you away from the cast, from Hawkins, and it's like begging you to please pay attention to this sister who has, in fact, tapped into the darkness. And we talk about, like your last caller, you know, I think that now it's a wonderful time to be alive because people are coming. They're feeling more comfortable to talk about these experiences, and one of the most common experiences is these the preying upon of children. And the energy of children. I mean,
right.
It would take me and you quite a few hours. Maybe you could do a podcast with me, shameless plug, one day, you know, when Star Wars has kind of been out a bit. But if you look back at the original Star Wars at Emperor Palpatine, and then look forward at the, and I hope no Roman Catholics get offended. I love Catholics, but we know there's an issue with the Roman Catholic Church and the preying upon of children and the energy of children.
Right.
And you look at Palpatine back in 1979, and then the Pope Benedict, and you see it on the internet all the time, these comparisons of how almost identical they look to one another. How could George Lucas have done that?
Well, it's but the thing is the grooming process is evil no matter what. I mean, you see how Palpatine manipulated Anakin and how he groomed him to be his Padawan. He groomed him to be his apprentice. And, you know, there are ways to be done. And to give Kali as another example, always remember why Anakin turned to the dark side of the Force. He did it because he didn't know how to separate his anger from his love.
Right.
And that when he went to the dark side, it was because his mother was killed and he killed the Sand People. And even though nobody cared about the Sand People all that much, he said, I killed them and I didn't care. I killed him. I didn't care. That was his pathway. He got to the point where he didn't care about people. He got to the point, even Sand People, didn't care about creatures. He didn't care about animals. He didn't care about anything. And he did it because he loved his mother and he loved Padme. He loved Queen Amidala. And so he felt like, I'm doing this for you. Don't you understand? I'm doing this for you. And I love you. And she said, well, I don't love you. This isn't something that I thought you would be doing, you know, but I want to be more powerful. I want to show you how powerful I am. And see, that's the thing is that Kali in Stranger Things 2, she kind of had that same feeling. She was doing it out of love. She's like saying, well, I'm killing all of these people who oppressed us. I'm killing all these people who tortured us. I'm killing all these people that brought us into the lab and started, you know, messing with our minds. But of course, she wasn't like that. She wouldn't do that. And so, yeah, it shows that, you know, you can have the power and you can nurture the power, but what you do with it. And then, you know, you brought up something else too, the divine feminine. It's all coming back to the divine feminine. If you notice that the most powerful character in Stranger Things is a girl named Elle, or 11. Kali's powerful too, but we don't see much of her anymore because they've separated now. But now you look at Star Wars and you look at who the protagonists are and who the most powerful are. And for a moment in that film, I was realizing, wow, it's almost like, when we're in a vulnerable position, we want the arms of mom. We want the wisdom of mom. We want mom. And that's exactly what I got from Star Wars 2, this new one, is that it's the idea of mom is the one with the right things to say. Mom is the right one that in the end, you can be trained, you can whip your lightsaber around all you want, but in the end, it's mom that uses the wisdom and still has her arms open to you.
Right, and that's what we get. The entire Matrix series. The word Matrix comes from maternal and mother. Maya, the feminine, and it's just in your face, and it indicates that we need to kind of think in a right brain type of way now in this new era.
Our mammalian brain. We need to use our mammalian brains rather than our reptilian minds.
Right. And, I don't think this is going to ruin the movie, but if you were to ask me what this new movie is really trying to say to us as a society, especially those of us who are tapping into gifts or are utilizing gifts, is this one line is, we win by not fighting what we hate, but saving what we love. And that was so profound to me.
Oh, my gosh, yes, that line is beautiful.
I said, if that one line is the message that this is trying to say to all of us in this generation,
that's beautiful.
Really make a difference.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that line up. We won't say why it was given, but it was given, and it's amazing. This whole film, like I said, Star Wars, The Last Jedi, has such a reverence about it and such an amazing message, and it's just a struggle. It has always been a struggle, but this is more of a real struggle for the characters. But if you bring it into the contemporary life in our reality, we're struggling now. We're the vulnerable ones. We've suffered the trauma, and now we have to tap into the powers we have. But according to a lot of my listeners tonight who are calling in, we're going to go to the calls, they have been trained already. They were trained when they were kids and got a lot of people lined up to talk about it. And some of them are even the trainers, that they're a part of this project, this secret project. There are several secret projects out there, covert projects, where they're training young people to be the warriors of the future. Mind warriors. Not just physical, but mental warriors. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. We'll be back. Daniel Lewis Crumpton with us tonight. Let's go to Sergey in Ireland. Hi, Sergey. You're on Ground Zero.
Hi, Clyde, sir.
Hi. Go ahead.
Hi, Clyde. I'm thinking more about the second generation of those trainers who, because we have internet now and we have lots of computer games they have this inbuilt ability for people to be in the same realm as a tournaments or a multiplayer mode. I believe that these people are watching some of those players and see who actually can do things with intuition, because some of those games are so complicated you can only think ahead of the machine.
I never thought of that. So you're saying that they're monitoring, and I know because I used to work for Microsoft. Actually, I worked for their gaming live group. They're monitoring to see if these guys are acting with intuition. If they have better intuition, and they would probably find them and talk to them about it. Is that what you're telling me?
I think they will take it even further than talking about them. They will actually try to implant, not to implant thoughts to them, but kind of telepathically, to see if they can telepathically control them. So to say, look, turn left, turn like in their mind, and to see whether they correspond. And if they do, then they can be given, they can be transferred to some private forums or maybe sub forums or, so-called private schools, where they were told, look, you seem to be very good at this, so would you like to try this? So I'm not sure if the games are designed this way, but I would say there are definitely people who are in those games watching people.
I could easily see, Daniel, what do you think? I could easily see somebody, calling a kid and saying, hey, we notice how you play, your game, Call of Duty. Would you like to come and learn how to fly a drone? What do you think of that, Daniel?
Oh, yeah, that's a given.
Yeah.
I think it was Last Starfighter where they kind of gave that big reveal. But there is no doubt that people, with MK Ultra and things like that, governments around the world, to be able to tap into or find people who are gifted in remote viewing or other types of abilities,
right,
they're going to cast a wide net. And it is certainly going to be in things like video games. I'm one of the believers in a holographic reality that we live in. So to be able to manipulate a simulation within a simulation, that's power.
Well, that goes back to the Matrix, doesn't it? I mean, you train the young ones to, or that kid that was he was waiting room and he says, the spoon, the spoon isn't bending. There is no spoon. He was talking about that. And it's like all the illusion, we all live in a matrix. This is all an illusion, like a video game. And there are people who believe that we live in a video game. And so that's why, all of this idea of hyper reality and virtual reality, it will become confusing. And I think Sergei's onto something. The new training ground would be the video game.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think, Sergei?
I mean that's probably the easiest way to approach kids. And I know not everybody has access to internet and to computer games, so they could be, easily approaching the, refugee camps or homeless people, giving them away their free phones or free PlayStations and saying, look, this is a gift from this and that charity. So they can bring those people in, and they would be more, willing to train. But once they're in their teens and then they go, they always give them some kind of link. Look, if you're interested, then go to that site and see where the journey takes you.
Yes.
So once they are there, the forums, like I'm not a teenager, I don't really play games, but once you're in those forums, and if you happen to,
we're running out of time. Hold on, we're running out of time. I'll be right with you. Hold on, we're gonna hold them over. Hold on.
Where is my mind? Where is my mind? Where is my mind?
You are listening to Ground Zero. The numbers to call tonight, 888-673-3700. It's 888-673-3700. Daniel Lewis Crumpton, my guest tonight. Star Wars, The Last Jedi in theaters. Not giving away any spoilers tonight. The show is just too unique and too compelling to even bust out anything that may give away a part of the program. But we are talking about some of the themes that seem to be interwoven with it all, and that is the idea of being taught special powers, utilizing those powers, the hero's journey. All these general things that Lucas put in the films are now back in Star Wars, but we're now seeing them evolve into shows like Stranger Things. We remember The Matrix and how that too brought all that into the picture. And it was Sergei on the phone with us from Ireland who was bringing up the video game angle. Sergei, go ahead and wrap up what you were saying so we can get on to other calls. But it was very interesting that you were talking about how, that they may, someone out there may be monitoring somebody playing a video game knowing that they have some sort of intuition, and that they're getting the intuition to shoot, and they may be, they use that kind of intuition in battle.
I think the most, this is probably the most innocent part of recruiting, but once these kids are brought to the private forums, I think this is where they can be, you can say, manipulated or maybe very brutally, telepathically attacked and controlled. And I know this because I was on some, I'm a grown-up adult, but I was on some, you can say, chats of the radio shows, you could say, esoteric. And, the minute you're asking a question that would enlighten others in that chat room, you're not shut down, but you more or less thought, okay, thank you very much, that's a very nice question, but we're going to answer it privately. And I know I can almost feel thought implants, like somebody is scanning my brain and trying to get into who I am and what I'm doing. So it's with the kids, they wouldn't have protection, especially when they are immersed into the world of computer room.
Yeah.
The reality of the game, they can be it's very easy to entrap them into that world and then to manipulate them through the symbols, just to say, look, what you're dealing with here is similar to the wall you saw in the game, or this is the path, or this is the gift. So it takes to the new level where those so-called mentors, they are definitely, and I'm sure that some of those mentors, they were actually the kids who were approached 30, 40 years ago in schools. with those ESP cards. That's my point.
Well, Sergey, very good point. And yeah, I didn't even put into, I didn't even think about the idea of what this type of skill or this type of environment, whether it's the artificial battlefield environment, is doing to kids, and how it's actually enhancing or maybe manipulating their inner powers. And this is something that most certainly should be considered, especially now when we hear of kids that are like mastering video games and doing other things. It's just mind-blowing what some kids can do. And, it's like the lightsaber, Daniel. It's like, they play with lightsabers in Star Wars. Kids used to play with joysticks. Now they've got the pad in their hands.
Yeah, Clyde, I've said this before, and I'm absolutely convinced that the Internet is self-aware, and I believe that it is feminine. And I find that ironic that now we're starting to see this Sophia AI pop up. And I'm very cautious when people say they and them, and they have this power and they are recruiting. And I'm very aware that there is a negative side out there that is manipulating people. But could it be possible that if the Internet is self-aware and it is awake and it is feminine, like many ancient prophecies of the return of Sophia, that she is recruiting too?
Well, Sophia, Sophia is the only robot to be a Saudi citizen. And we talked about Sophia the other night. I find that interesting you bring up Sophia, because we were talking about her the other night, the thinking AI. She was at a meeting of a bunch of Saudi businessmen, and they basically said, we want to make you a citizen. And she has more rights than a Saudi female does.
It's getting interesting. I mean, if you look up pick up the Nag Hammadi Library in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and it talks about the goddess Sophia returning or waking up from a coma after so many eras. And we tie this in with the feminine divine in pop culture. I believe that there's some merit to all of this, and I believe that our consciousness, our collective consciousness, being plugged in through the Internet, has woken her up. Perhaps. Maybe.
That's something to think about. Let's go to Kathy in Massachusetts. Hi, Kathy. You're on with Daniel Lewis Crumpton.
Hi. Yeah. Okay. Here's I have a son who is 40 years old now, and I took him to his first Star Wars movies from the beginning. They were actually released later, and that's why he saw them all. But here's the thing. You were talking about the mother influence in this latest one, which I have not seen. And my son got married about 12 years ago to a woman who sort of disowned me, and therefore he kind of, in a way, disowned me. But we still text, but we don't talk on the phone. I don't have a relationship with his daughters, except for I send them gift cards to their favorite bookstores every, holiday. And I'm wondering if, and I know he's going to see this movie because he actually went to film school, and right now he's writing for a TV show. But I'm wondering, do you think that this influence that you're talking about with the newest Star Wars film will actually maybe help him to reconnect with me on a more personal basis? Because I miss him.
It certainly makes you think about that sort of thing. I don't know, Daniel. When Princess Leia was on the screen, I couldn't help but think Mom. What about you?
I had the fortunate pleasure of meeting Carrie Fisher shortly before she passed, and it's hard to talk about this without spoiling the movie. But the prominence of Princess Leia as a mother figure, and Rey being the feminine light bearer now. It does speak of motherhood. I mean, we have lived in a patriarchal society for a very long time.
Well, it also speaks of parentage. And another thing, we can't give that away either. I mean, it speaks of parentage and how important parentage is, the struggle of, father and son, the struggle. I mean, that's what Star Wars has always been about mysterious fathers and sons that have been raised wrong, or they've been, they're going the wrong way. And I think this is one of the reasons why Luke is so discouraged, is because of that sort of thing. I mean, we know from the previous Star Wars that he trained Ben Solo, and Ben Solo became Kylo Ren. And so that's, I think, his biggest disappointment, is he's saying, well, I've seen this over and over again. Somebody comes in, they're an eager Jedi, they want to be a Jedi, but they take the power and they just abuse it. And I think the whole compass point, the focal point, would be Princess Leia and her role as a mother figure in the film. And that's what I thought of, Kathy, when I saw it, was that, they really, you really feel a kind of a parentage, because we've been raised on Star Wars. You feel the parentage and the heritage of that parentage with Princess Leia, and the idea of trying to find parents, or trying to find long lost parents, and wanting that love, and being able to use the power for that love, and for what we do to help each other.
It's interesting because he and I have always been so close. We were so close. In fact, my ex-husband used to get sort of jealous, you're too close, And it was just we just go on picnics to the park, and we just do things that mother and sons do, and I took him to all these movies and everything, and he, oh my God, he had all the Star Wars toys, and they're probably worth $1 million right now, what he had. But so we grew up really close, and then he met this girl, and that's fine. Kids do that, boys do that, and he married her, and then she was actually very heavily into witchcraft and stuff, which I didn't know, but I only discovered it when I went to their first apartment and I saw their book collection up. And
if she's into witchcraft, Kathy, if she's into witchcraft, they're certainly into the divine feminine, because that's all witchcraft is. Wicca and witchcraft is all about the divine feminine. It has nothing to do with males at all. It's all about female power.
Well, I guess, I don't know, maybe her female power is stronger than mine. I don't know. But when I saw it, I thought, this is odd, because I know this isn't Philip's collection.
Well, Kathy, maybe you need to tap into your power.
My power?
Use the Force, Kathy.
I don't know that I have.
Use the Force. The Force is with you, and you're one with the Force.
Yeah, I don't know.
Don't be skeptical.
I mean, Force is in a rest mode.
No. I'd say don't be skeptical. Go see Star Wars. It'll rejuvenate your battery. It'll come out of there thinking, yeah, I'm one with the Force, and the Force is with me. That's what you're going to come out thinking when you're in that film. It's that good.
Really?
Uh-huh.
If I may.
Yeah, Daniel, hold on. Okay, Daniel, what do you want to say?
If I may, Kathy, just keep this in mind when you do go see Star Wars. Typically with the hero's journey, which is relevant everywhere, what I tell people to do is, if you really want to get a beat on life, everything is really a tarot card, especially movies, books, and entertainment. Find the character that you relate to or that resonates with you, and you will know where you are at in your journey, and you will be able to see what's coming. And I think that'll give you some comfort, and I think that probably you'll talk to your son after you see the movie.
Yes, you will.
Well, I'm willing to talk to him. It's just we text.
It will draw. I'm sure that, Kathy, you see this movie, it will draw you towards your son, and your son will draw towards you, because it has that kind of effect.
I hope he draws towards me, because I'm always ready.
I thought about my wife when I was watching this. I was thinking about her wisdom. I was thinking about even though I'm just like this buffoon sometimes around her, I think her heart's in the right place. It always is, and I got to learn that. So anyway, Kathy, I thank you for the call.
Thank you.
You bet. Yeah, I would say that if she went and saw the movie, that her and her son would probably talk. They have to. I mean, I don't know how many times I teared up. I teared up in the movie.
You and I are chomping at the bit because we've seen it and we want to tell her so bad.
Yeah, I tell you.
Kathy,
we want to tell you something,
movie,
Kathy.
I think it would echo.
Yeah, they would understand what we're holding back. We're doing our best to hold back everything because it's such a remarkable movie. It really is.
It is.
Yeah. Daniel Lewis Crumpton. We're going to be back with you in just a bit, right here on Ground Zero. 888-673-3700. Daniel Lewis Crumpton with us tonight on Ground Zero. Let's go to JD in Missouri. Hi, JD. You're on Ground Zero.
Hi, Clyde. Thanks for taking my call.
You bet.
Listen, I'm just floored by you connecting the dots here and this groundbreaking between the Force and from what I've experienced in my life growing up. I was one of those kids that were taken aside and tested, and my mother actually ended up taking me to a doctor once a week. I was taken out of class another day of the week and groomed and just tested and just to see what I knew. And they used the premise of telling my mother that I had possibly an auditory memory problem, so it wasn't making me look like I was gifted, but maybe a disorder.
Like autism or something?
Excuse me?
Like autism or something?
Yeah, I think it's kind of going that direction with it, but I think, I don't know what you think, but I'm kind of under the influence that maybe autism, if you think about certain autistic people, that they really have a forte in something. And, that's kind of overlooked a lot. It's like you mentioned earlier, focus on the love, and create the love more than the hate and fighting the hate and anything that you don't like. Well, I've learned to develop different things, and I've gone more the empath and healer route, and actually a Reiki master found me several years ago, and so I learned Reiki healing energy. And when you think about that, it has a lot to do and connect some dots with the Force, and like when Obi-Wan Kenobi, I mean, I grew up, in the 70s, and all through grade school, the first 5 years, I was just going to these doctors once a week. My mother was taking me, driving me an hour away. And so, I don't know, I heard you talking about this earlier tonight, and I was like, wow. I was in my car driving, and I thought, finally, somebody is bringing some things together here, and there's an awakening. And they are grooming people and kids, as we speak. And it's just remarkable what you guys are uncovering here. It's about time somebody has done this and brought it all together. And who would know it was Star Wars and all the trilogy of Star Wars that would help us to realize these things.
Oh, it's even, like I said, it's Stranger Things, it's Star Wars, it's all of these. There's a message being sent out, and that message is that you have powers, that you have the power, and that either you have somebody that comes along and helps you nurture it, or you find it on your own. Even if you're somebody who thinks that they're not worthy of any of this power, you have it, and you need to use it.
Yeah, everybody has something.
Right.
It's just whether, you tap into it.
Daniel, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay. He just got cut off, I guess. I'm sorry. That was really good. What are you saying? I don't know why the phones are cutting off tonight, but they are. That's the second one tonight. Daniel, I want to thank you for being on the program tonight. Thank you so much. It was great. And I think we did a full-on, no spoiler Star Wars show.
Yeah, I think we did good. I think later on, after a few months, we need to really break it down. Me and you could probably pick it apart after people have had a chance to see it. But I think what's brilliant about this movie is that for a couple of years, all the fan speculations about who Snoke is, who this person is in relation to this, I watched all of those. And what this movie really pulled off was all of those guys didn't even touch.
I know. All of the theories are wrong. Anything you've read or seen on the internet about the film, wrong. And I'm laughing about that. You're right. Everything that, you see the theories and people are all like, oh, I know what that means. I know what Snoke is. I know who Snoke is. Yeah. We know who Snoke is, really. And it's like, oh, gosh, it's just all wrong.
It's what Luke said. This is not going to end the way you think.
On that note, Daniel, thank you. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate that. That's awesome. Thank you for being on the show. That's so good. It's right. He's right. It's not going to end the way you think. 888-673-3700. More from you about being trained outside of the classroom or trained in some way. Love to hear from you. Coming up on Ground Zero. 888-673-3700. We'll be back.
FM News 101.